to Freshly Forever, a podcast that gives you fascinating insights week after week. Here's your host, Vi Kumar.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode on podcast Freshly Forever. Today I have the pleasure of talking to Kellie Taylor, who is the founder and CEO of Taylor Street Designs. And she created that company to enable brand building and help other women build their businesses. And she also wanted to teach them to maintain and grow those businesses with a strong and amazing brand. In addition to being this digital media expert, Kellie also mentors and nurtures young talent. That's why we are here today to talk about summer break opportunities for teens, the role of parents and society in nurturing their passion. Hey, Kellie, how are you today? Welcome to Podcast Freshly Forever.
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Oh, it's always a joy seeing you. And I just thought there's no better person to talk about summer break opportunities for teens and the role of us parents and society in nurturing them. Because you have a teenage entrepreneur in your household, and, we have seen several in our area, definitely coming up with their passion area and doing really well too. So why do you think it's important that we take up this topic as a discussion aspect, if we can start there?
Yeah, no, that's so great. And I am super excited to be here and talk about this topic because as you mentioned, I actually have two entrepreneurial teenagers in my house, and being an entrepreneur myself, I'm clearly very passionate about this topic.
Mm-hmm.
As parents, I think parents of teenagers and young adults, I feel like at this point in our lives, we've done a great job at learning how to parent our kids. Most of us have figured that out by the time we're 16, 17, 18 years old. But what I found a few years ago is that what I didn't know and have struggled a little bit with is how do I parent my teenager or young adult? Because it's very different than how you parent your kids, right? And making that shift and that break of sort of, I am a self-identified helicopter mom. I admit it. I have always been and definitely am one of those of really trying to help, and I say that in quotes, my kids with anything and everything that they want to do. As they've gotten older and more independent, I've learned that a lot of times my quote unquote help is not helpful at all, because they want to learn and do things themselves in their own way. It's important for us to know that the way we used to do things with our kids is actually changing and needs to be a little bit different. But it doesn't mean that we still can't be amazing parents and still can't actually legitimately help our teenage and young adult kids. But it's just in a different way. And I didn't learn it until I started talking to some of my friends who had kids that were a little bit older than me, and just hearing their stories and hearing what they've experienced. Just like we do when our kids are little, we talk to our friends, we read the books, we learn how to parent our kids when they're little. It's important to have these conversations now with our young adult kids and talk about how we can help and parent them better in this next stage that they are becoming.
I think, you talked about helicopter parent. I think we all have been at some stage or the other, and in some way or the other. So I think, it's definitely worth talking about this and see how better we can do as far as helping them the right way, but then, still stay that distance apart and let them be what they want to be, right?
Right.
So how then do we identify these entrepreneurial teens? What are some factors or questions you would ask in this process of even determining whether they are going that route?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And, it's interesting because you can have, whether you're a teenager, a young adult, an older person, we all have passions and we all have things that we love doing. I think what determines if that passion can grow into an entrepreneurial situation, or if you have a young adult or teenager who is an entrepreneur, there are some key factors, I think, that will determine that, because it's one thing to have a passion and just love to do something, but it's a whole nother thing to turn it into a business and do all the work that involves turning something into a business. So a couple things that I sort of look at, and I've seen in my kids, I've seen in other teenagers that I work with and know who are killing it in their businesses. First and foremost is what I call grit. And I actually heard this definition from Dr. Janine Janot, who I know has been on your podcast, and she's the parent guru, and she is definitely one of my go-to as far as advice and learning how to parent young adults. But she defines grit.
She is phenomenal,
Isn't
right?
She's amazing. I know. I love her. And I heard her define grit one time as passion plus effort. And that, I think, is the perfect combination, because if you're passionate about something and you just like doing it, but you're not willing to put in the effort that it takes to grow it or make it something big, whatever that thing is, then you're probably not an entrepreneur. You're probably just super passionate or talented, or you really like something. But if you have that passion and you are willing to put in the effort that it takes day in and day out, you definitely could be an entrepreneur. I also think that there's a bit of obsession that is sort of required to be an entrepreneur. You really need to be obsessed with this idea or this thing or this product or this service or this whatever it is that you have come up with that you want to put out into the world. You really need to think about it and almost obsess about it all the time. So if you if you see your teenager, thinking about something and talking about it in all different kinds of ways, researching it, talking to friends about it, you overhear them on the phone, you see them, looking at online at things that are relevant to this idea that they have, they might be a little obsessed, and that's a good thing. Like, you want them to be that way.
And it's almost like, day in and day out, that's kind of like what they are into at that point in time, right?
Yes, exactly. There's, motivation, like this thing that they are sort of obsessed with. That is what's going to motivate them to keep going when it gets frustrating and hard and boring, and they're doing all the things that aren't the exciting parts of running a business, but they stay motivated. Joy and enthusiasm, I think, are two other ones. Like, they genuinely feel joy from this idea or this thing that they are doing, and they're enthusiastic about it without our input or without any external factors telling them they need to be excited about it. They just genuinely are, and they're interested in it. So I think if your teenager has all of those aspects when and you can see it in their eyes, you see it when they talk to you about their idea, they light up from inside, even if it's just right now in the baby infancy stages of just this random idea they had, but they are obsessively talking about it and they're lighting up when they talk about it, then, that's what being an entrepreneur looks like. It looks and feels different with everyone because every single person is different, but those are some key elements that if you're seeing your teenager have those things about them when they are talking about an idea that they have, then you might want to encourage it and think to yourself, okay, they might be an entrepreneur and this could be really scary, but this is a good thing. And I'm going to listen and sit back and watch this happen and, get ready, because it's definitely an adventure.
So you said scary. It could be scary. So could it be scary? Could it be intriguing? You just still go with the flow, kind of try to encourage them. And because you kind of see that, it seems like, okay, this is what it seems to look like. They seem to exhibit that joy, that enthusiasm. And then I also see that motivation and obsession. Is it normal for parents to feel, oh, this seems somewhat intriguing, it's also kind of scary to me, but I don't know how this is going to shape up.
Yeah.
But then you're saying just go with the flow at that point.
Yes. I mean, so here's when I talk to parents about this, I think that once you identify as a parent, okay, my kid, they have an idea, and it can be some crazy idea that you literally have nothing about, or it could be an idea that you're like, oh yeah, no, I definitely see how they have come to this idea and figured this out and created this product or want to go this route with the business. It can either make total sense to you or it can absolutely be completely foreign to you. Either way, as parents, there are some definite things that we need to do and that we should absolutely not do to help inspire our kids in this. I think that one thing that we definitely need to do is ask questions. And when I say ask questions, like when they start talking to you, put your phone down, focus on what they're talking about, let them talk, and then genuinely ask follow-up questions that you're genuinely interested in and that you really want to know. And that sort of is two things. One, it helps them to think through some of these processes and some of these things by answering questions that they may not have thought through. Two, it builds their confidence, because if you ask a question that you don't know about, but they know the answer to and they can explain it to you, they're going to feel really great about themselves. And they're going to feel really confident that, oh my gosh, I just taught my mom something about this thing that I love and I'm passionate about. And that's really fantastic. And then three, it's really going to genuinely show them that you are interested in them as a person, as someone with ideas, as someone who, you as a mom or dad really respects. And I think that's a level that sometimes as parents, we forget to talk to and treat our young adult kids, our teenage kids at that level. Because I know for me, in my mind, my son is 18. He's about to go to college. I literally texted him today something, and I was like, I said something in the text, and I was like, said like 3-year-old Alex would say, because in my mind, he's still 3, not 18, because we all our kids as little, right? But I think when you engage your kids who are your teenagers who are entrepreneurs, and you engage them in discussions about their business, it really reflects back to them that, oh, my mom or my dad really respects me, and they really value my thoughts and my thinking, and they're really interested. And so I think asking questions is one of the most valuable things you can do and valuable ways you can help your teenager in starting, in building, and in growing their business, whatever that looks like.
And it kind of almost like sends a signal to them that, okay, one, yes, I'm able to answer my parents' question. And two, okay, it all seems like I'm making sense. When somebody lends a patient lending ear to whatever thought or idea that they are trying to propose, the minute you receive it well, and it's a good reminder you had there to put the phone down and to, listen with all the intent that you can. And I guess, it really, helps build their confidence. So you really covered it nicely there, Kellie. And why is it so great for teens to go off of their intuition coupled with all these determining factors? Why do you think they really need to go after whatever they feel they need to do?
I love teenagers who are entrepreneurs, because I didn't become an entrepreneur till I was in my 40s, late 30s. I was full on an adult before I was bold enough and brave enough and figured out like that's what I want to do, right? I love when teenagers and young adults figure it out early, especially teenagers who are either still in high school or maybe in college. But I love it when high schoolers are, because this is the perfect time for them to go off and try their ideas without having risk involved, right? Because they don't have responsibilities of family, of bills, of all these things that they have to pay for. So the pressure of having to make money in their business, which I don't care if they're 15 or 55, if you're an entrepreneur, the entire goal of and reason to be an entrepreneur is to make money. And I know that feels a little taboo, and a lot of people don't like to talk about it because you're like, oh, you should talk about money, and especially women and young girls. And that's a whole nother topic. But the whole purpose of being an entrepreneur and having a business is to make money. And
I guess you're saying, it's the reward factor, and which can also be the driving force for them to achieve more, correct? And so it's not wrong to say, okay, entrepreneur, they need to make money is not something wrong. It's a reward, and that makes you feel good about what you do. And you really nicely pointed it out there that it's a great time for them to try it out, because I guess it doesn't hurt to fail at this stage, like you pointed out.
Yeah, exactly. And there really is at this stage, I mean, really at any stage, but especially at this stage, there's no failing. I call it pivoting, right? Like you can have an idea and you can try it, and then you can figure out, wait, that idea doesn't work. So I'm going to switch it or pivot it or do something different. And it could be something completely different, but that doesn't mean that first idea is a failure. Like when I started off wanting to design stationery. I was going to design stationery, and then it switched into party planning, and then it switched into photography, and now I'm a web designer, right? And so completely different, still in the creative space, but I don't look at my past 3 entrepreneurial experiences as failures. I look at it, they were pivots to get me to where I am today. And this is, they totally directed the path of where I am today. And this is where I really want to be. Who knows where I'll be 10 years from now. But for teenagers, like being able to have the freedom to try something, and then either deciding they need to pivot, deciding, okay, that didn't work out for whatever reason, I'm going to change it. Being able to do that without the pressure of, okay, I really can't change because I need to make this one work because I have to pay bills and I've got all these responsibilities. They don't have that right now. So this is a really great time for them to try things, those things not work out, learn new things, try different things, and really absorb everything we need to about being an entrepreneur, about business life, about work ethic, and it all the things that they're going to try and do for their business right now are things that are really going to benefit them into adulthood and make them really amazing adults.
And it also opens this realm of possibilities, the plethora of possibilities that exist. And that's, I guess, you nicely pointed out, then they can pivot. So if one doesn't work, then they also are able to go out there and figure that, okay, maybe, this is another option for me, because now I see this other dimension that exists. And, I can just possibly, make it better doing it this way.
Right. Exactly. And I think another thing, sort of going back to as parents, how we can help our kids in that space, right, is when we ask our kids questions about their passion and their business and the thing that they're doing and putting out into the world, ask a lot of questions, but don't by any means offer advice unless they ask you for it. Do not offer up your advice, even if they are doing something that is in the realm of your career and you've been doing your entire life and you are the absolute expert of the world in that thing. Keep your mouth shut. Don't say anything unless they ask you for your advice. That is because you need them to be able to figure it out themselves. And if they know that you have knowledge in the space that they're starting a business in, they're going to come to you when they need you. But how you can support your kids in this and their efforts is, again, businesses need to make money. They need some money to start things up, right? So you can support them if you can support them financially, help them start their business if they need some startup money, or if they need to buy materials for a prototype, or if they need to, need a little bit of money at first to get started with a website, or whatever it is. Like if you can support them financially, if they ask and have questions and need your advice about their business because they know that you are in that space, then absolutely share what you know, but only with their permission, only if they ask you. And then encourage them and listen and praise and support, right? So those are the 4 things as parents: encourage, listen, praise, and support. That's what we do for our kids in their entrepreneurial endeavors. And what that allows them to do is have the confidence to do what they need to do to learn and start their business, grow their businesses, pivot as needed, and really just test and try things out. And again, being a teenager, this is the perfect time to do that because there's low risk in it.
Absolutely. And you said, support them financially, but then render advice only if they ask you for it, right?
Yes.
So are you able to tell clearly at this point as a parent whether someone can be entrepreneur or should be entrepreneur?
Yes. And so here's the thing between my 2 kids. So my son, he was born with an entrepreneurial spirit. Like but only in a certain, he wants to be a film director. He is a film director. And so he has had a passion for that since he was 11. He started his production company when he was 15. It's very much one direction. Like that's his passion. That's his obsession. He has not veered from that. He is super motivated. There's not been a moment since he was 15 that he hasn't gone, full boat straight into his passions and doing that. My daughter, she could be an amazing entrepreneur. She should be because she has the talent. She has, some experience in it. She clearly has all the support she needs in this family to do it. But she may not want to be. Right now, she wants to be an engineer. And so here's the other thing you have to be careful with. And there was a time when she was really young. She actually had this idea of this product that she wanted to make, and it was an incredible idea. She designed and made a prototype and created something. She had a big heart for homeless people, and she created this thing that she wanted to give to homeless people to help them. And it was an amazing, phenomenal idea. My husband and I and our son jumped on in, and we were like, that's so great. You should do this. You should market it so that if people buy one, then one gets donated to a homeless person. You can make a lot of money with it. Because we jumped in with our advice, quote unquote, and our thoughts and our suggestions, that killed the idea out of her. She was like, nope, nope. She was like, I didn't want to do it as a business. I didn't want to make money from it. I wanted to do it to help somebody. And that's the only reason I wanted to do that. So in that sense, sometimes your kids have ideas because they want to do something good for the world. And that is amazing. But that doesn't mean they need to be an entrepreneur to do that, right? They can help volunteer at charities. They can create something to, give away to help someone in the community. But they don't necessarily need to or should be an entrepreneur in that case. And not everybody needs to be. It doesn't mean that you don't have a passion. It doesn't mean that you don't have the talent and you're not going to create or make or put something out into the world that makes this world a better place, which hopefully entrepreneurs do that too, but your teen might just want to do that without being an entrepreneur. So sometimes there's a fine line between it.
Oh, sure.
But I think that even if your teenager could or should be an entrepreneur, if they don't want to, if that's not their passion to do that, then definitely do not force it. Don't tell them they need to. And So my daughter, this was back in middle school when she had this idea, and I felt so guilty for years because I felt like we killed that out of her spirit by jumping in, trying to help. And then she got into high school and she kind of fell into another thing, and she started another design business that she loved. And I learned from my past mistake, and I stayed out of it until she asked me questions. And I asked her questions about it, and I encouraged her, and I asked to see all of her designs because I thought they were beautiful and lovely. And I hired her to make me some things and paid for some of her products and supported her financially. But I have stayed completely out of it. And she's starting to come around and be like, well, I might actually really like this. We're waiting to see where that goes, but I'm not pressuring or pushing that at all.
Okay. And we have talked so much about parental support, and you have nicely pointed out, how best it is for some to stay away, in certain situations, and then, or give your 2 cents worth when, it's time to chip in, or when they ask for it, right? Or rather, I should say, only when they ask for it.
Yes, exactly.
Because that's the emphasis here. But how then, Kellie, do you kind of say, like in your daughter's situation in the first time around, how do you really understand whether their dream sometimes, scares them, or whether it scares them a little, or whether they get scared a lot about this dream that they have? They don't know how they would execute it, but then, how do you figure if, that's what is kind of stopping them?
Yeah. Well, and I think that can come out in the questions you ask them, right? So you can ask, hey, how do you feel about this? And how do you feel about like the next steps that you're going to be taking in this business? Or, so listening to their answers on how they feel about something, and then just if they come to you and say, and answering those questions, if they're like, I am really scared about this, but I know I can do it. That's when you encourage them and you're like, yeah, no, anything worth having or worth doing should absolutely scare you a little bit or a lot, because if it doesn't, then you might not be doing the right thing, right? You're not pushing yourself. You're not really challenging yourself in the ways that you should be challenged, because every good thing, I think, brings a little bit of fear with it, right? And excitement. My daughter, when she was little, she coined the phrase nerve-sighted. She was like, I'm nervous and I'm excited all at the same time. And I was like, anything new makes you nervous and excited. Anything worth doing makes you nervous and excited. And so that's that point where I think with our kids, in starting a business or having an idea even of something they want to put out into the world, but having no clue where to start or how to do it, should scare them a little bit. But it shouldn't scare them enough to not do it. And so that's where we as parents, when we ask the questions, that we really have to listen, right? Because sometimes they'll just say, no, I got this, I got it. So we need to keep asking questions and really listen to those answers. And then instead of offering advice, you can ask them questions. Like if they're like, yeah, I want to do this thing, but I don't even know how to get started. You can say, well, have you gone to Google? Have you researched, where to find the materials or how to do this thing, and not say, well, you need to go to Google, go to this website, research this. Don't give them all those answers, even if, again, you're the expert in it and you know the answers. And trust me, mom and dad, it's going to kill you to your core not to be able to build this roadmap for them, especially if you've built a business in the same sort of sense. It will kill you to your core, but you need to not do it. But you can help direct a little bit by asking questions and say, well, have you researched this? Have you done that? And then leave it at that and let them go do that, right?
And this can be an iterative process, right? It can happen over several iterations, like them coming to you. Because all those questions, you're not probably going to be able to ask them in one sitting.
Oh, yeah.
Because then it's probably going to, you're going to probably become a nag on them.
Yes.
And, they're not going to appreciate that either, right?
Right. No. Yeah. So the questions you ask more need to be out of pure interest. And then if an answer to one of the questions starts to get into that emotional realm where you start to really sense, okay, they're scared, they're not sure, they're unsure, they don't know what to do, then you start to sort of can ask questions like, well, have you done any research on this? And, or have you talked to your friends about this idea and get their thoughts on it, right? Like, again,
Mm-hmm.
It's just giving them the little bit of idea of getting them out of the place that they're stuck in their head that's causing that fear and causing them to be stuck. And if you've supported them in a way that makes them feel confident, respected, and supported as an adult, then they're going to keep coming back to you because they're going to value your advice. I mean, think about it. As adults, if we need business advice or advice on anything that is adult-like, right? And we go to someone and we ask their advice, or we're telling them something, and they give us feedback in a way that doesn't make us feel good, or makes us feel threatened, or makes us feel bad or pressured, we're not going to go back to that person for more.
Oh, sure not.
Right? But if we ask an adult, a friend, of whatever, and we're like, and they give us feedback that makes us feel good about ourselves and makes us feel confident in our direction and our decisions, they're going to be a trusted person, and we're going to keep going back to them. So as our kids are teenagers and young adults who are entrepreneurs, we need to treat them like we would another business partner, another adult in the business world, and really treat them with that respect. And they're going to feel that and see that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Leads me to this question. You said they can probably bounce their ideas off of their friends too.
Mm-hmm.
What about, and I agree, parents, like when we sense any, even a wee bit of hesitancy, if you will, or getting to that zone where they become sort of emotional, maybe it just helps to give them some confidence. But at the same time, if it seems like, we are probably better off having that conversation on a different day or time,
Mm-hmm.
then maybe just put it off until then, right? But just in the interim, give them that confidence and help them overcome whatever that fear or whatever is stopping them from even sharing more with you.
Mm-hmm.
And it could even be some of our answers that may have made them, pivot or want them to pivot in a different direction, but then they haven't figured it out. So for them to feel confident to even share it with a parent,
Mm-hmm.
I think they may need more time, and it may make more sense to give them that. But what about skepticism at the peer level and whatever society is going to throw at them?
Mm-hmm.
How can we help them handle that part, Kellie?
So that is such a good question, because obviously as an entrepreneur and a business owner, even a creative or an idea maker, right? When you put something out into the world that you have created or made and you feel very passionate about, and it's very personal to you, you are going to get people who treat you badly or say bad things or make you feel bad about it, right? You're going to get the haters.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what's interesting is that I kind of feel like our teenagers today have a much better handle on and way of dealing with the haters than we actually do, because unfortunately with social media, they've experienced it a lot younger and a lot more than we ever did as teenagers growing. We experienced it through our friends and peers, either over a landline phone or in class or in person, right? Those were the ways we could get that negative feedback. And unfortunately, our kids can get it a million different ways every minute of every day. And so I think they're actually probably more attuned to it and at this point better at handling it. But from a business perspective, I think if they do get it and they do confide in you about it, I think the best thing is just to reinforce, look, haters are going to hate, and it's not about you, it's about them. I mean, all the things that we as parents know and we say, right? And really just trying to remind them that this idea that they have, they're putting out into the world is really good. And it's going to help the world in XYZ fashion. And it's brave of them to do it. And they, don't listen to the people that are telling them not to do it, or that they're doing it wrong, or that they should do it these other ways, or that whatever the reason is, and that they really need to trust themselves and trust their gut and do it the way they want to do it. Reach out to people that they trust for advice, but ultimately they need to do it their way. And their way may not succeed. It might not be the right way ultimately for them in the end, but they still have done it their way, and they've decided to pivot and change if they decide that. But as parents, we also have to know that, it's going to happen. And for parents who are entrepreneurs or who have run businesses or been in that world, we all know that happens, and you got to toughen up your skin and keep moving on. And while it's hard to see our kids go through that, they're going to have to go through that too, right? And they're going to have to learn how to manage and deal with it on their own, because pretty soon they're going to be out in the real world and they're not going to have us there to buffer. So it's terrible advice, because it's really non-advice that I'm giving you, just to say, you have to let them go through it. But as teenagers and soon to be young adults, they're going to have to learn how to manage through that in life and in business.
Back in a moment with our guest on Freshly Forever. Yeah, and sometimes, embracing that vulnerability, and for them to, just say that, okay, yes, and talk openly about it, and then figure their way out. I think, that definitely helps. And what about someone that has a great idea? There may be teenagers, there may be even parents who do not know how best they can guide their child, right? So someone has a great idea, they want to pursue it. What should be the first steps or next steps that they can take? So those individuals that need resources to go after, I know we touched upon a little earlier, but what would those be?
So I would say, if you have an idea, if you're a teenager and you have an idea of something, and you're right at that stage, you're like, oh my gosh, I just thought of this great thing that can solve this problem for these people. Now what, right? Go to Google. Literally Google the thing, Google the idea, Google everything about it. Do your research about this idea that you have to see if it is something that can solve a problem for a big group of people, a small group of people. See who it works for, right? Google and find out what it would take to make the thing or launch the service or whatever it is, right? Whether it's a book, whether it's creating inventing a product, whether it's, whatever the thing is, start with your research to see, okay, is something like this out there already? And if it is, then think, okay, well, how can mine be different? How can I differentiate my thing, right? And how can I make clearly? So as a web designer, there are millions of web designers out there. I'm not unique in that sense at all. So when I did that, I was like, well, how am I going to be different? Well, I niched it down, and I was like, I'm going to design websites for women entrepreneurs, because that's my passion. That's who I really like to work with. And I want to help women launch their businesses online. And so you really kind of focus in on who you're helping with your thing, how your thing is going to help them, and is that thing out there already? If it is, how can you differentiate it? If it isn't, then you take the next steps of, oh, okay, how do I make my thing or get it out there?
And actually, I'm going to ask you this question. How important is journaling in this phase? Does it even precede your step of wanting to Google something and figure out whether it exists, or, you just, because one has to just write down or physically put their ideas down at some stage, correct?
Yeah.
For them to even have a layout to go after.
You're definitely going to need a business plan at some point. So, and sooner rather than later. So you can even Google business plan templates if you want to start there, right? So like you just look up, there's free business plan templates, print one out, download one, and that can walk you through the different elements if you truly don't know where to start, right? So if you're like, I have this idea, I know it's going to be great. Now what? Start with a business plan, because that will walk you through, financials, legal elements, sourcing products, like manufacturing. I'm literally making up all this because not all those elements are needed for every business, but start with a business plan. And that, to your point of writing these ideas down. So, I mean, I have notebook after notebook of just brainstorms and ideas and things like that. So, which is not a business plan and nothing formal. So however it works for you to jot ideas down, write ideas down, brainstorm, you're going to need to come up with a business name. So that might be days and days and pages of just creatively thinking of business names and writing them down and Googling, is that name taken, and looking at domain names. And, so there's a billion and one aspects to running and starting a business, which is why your big why, your WHY needs to be solid, right? So you need to have the motivation and the passion and the grit to be able to do this, because you might be creative and love to design websites like me, but you have no idea how to manage a spreadsheet and your financials and, all the other elements that are non-creative that require running a business. So there's a million things you're going to have to do. And if your why of why you're doing this business isn't strong enough, and your motivation to keep your motivation going, and your passion and your grit and your work effort isn't there, then you're not going to go very far. You're not going to get very far, because there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen in the beginning before you launch out into the world. And you can.
Okay. Yeah. So what about books, webinars, and courses? Aside from Google, what other resources can possibly someone go after?
So, it really, there's so much out there. It really depends on the type of business you want to do, right? So if you are a service-based business, then you're going to want to, again, going back to Google, you're going to want to Google, free webinars for service-based businesses, or for website designers, or how to get started as an X, Y, or Z entrepreneur. How do I contact manufacturers, in China to make my prototype? There are hundreds of free webinars on any given topic, right? So there's not one resource for an entrepreneur. Now you can go to the Small Business Association, SBA.gov, and they have just pages and pages of resources for different topics. There's a book called Entrepreneuring that you can get off of Amazon that sort of helps you with those main basic things that you need to start a business. So business plan, talking to an accountant about an LLC, getting a domain, like it sort of walks you through some of the general aspects of starting a business. So it really depends on where you are in the process and what you need help with. But you can do it for free. So you can get to a certain point where you don't have to spend any money. You can get pretty far into it, but then at some point you are going to have to spend some money, right? You're going to need to spend some money. So that's another big aspect, especially as a teenager. It's like, okay, well, how am I going to get the money that I need to set up my website, or, get my business license, right? Which is like $50 a year that you have to, as a business, you have to pay. How am I going to get that money? So then you think, well, do I want to do a Kickstarter? My son did 2 Kickstarters to fund his films, and raised all the money he needed for his film production. Am I going to ask my parents, to help fund, come in on the ground floor and help fund my business? Am I going to ask my grandparents? Am I going to get investors in the business? Like, these are all the things that you need to think about. And again, you want to say, how do I start in this business based on the idea you have? And really do your research. And but you can do all of that for free. Like, there are so many resources and websites, webinars that you can go to for free to get the information you need, and really do your due diligence to make sure you're following guidance from people who know what they're talking about and who.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And now that we've talked about all of this entrepreneurial talent among tweens, teens, what about kids that demonstrate a lot of talent, but they are not quite there yet? And how can their summer look like? What can be some pursuits that they can go after? And what other avenues can kids do during the summer to make the most of their break time, like make it more productive?
Yeah. So the one thing I love, if you have a teenager that is super talented in a certain area, but doesn't want to start a business and doesn't want to do all of that, look up nonprofit organizations that they can volunteer their time and their talents, right? So it's, if they are really good at social media and creating social media graphics and posting on Instagram or whatever, and they just love doing that, and they think maybe they might want to do that for a career or as a job later or start a business down the road, but they aren't sure, contact a nonprofit that either them or you and your family, like that your family is passionate about or really wanting to support. I guarantee you all nonprofits would love to have a teenager managing their social media for them. Like, that is such a huge gift for anybody. But so, and nonprofits and charitable organizations love that kind of thing and are really, really wanting to get that help and those talents from people. So that's one way to get started at something. If you're in the creative space, build a portfolio. So even for colleges, like, even if you don't have a business, but you work for a charity or a nonprofit, and let's say you want to go to college and get a graphic design degree, when you're in high school working with a charity and managing their social media graphic designs or their website design or marketing or whatever it is, that's a great thing you can put on a college application to show that, I've really been passionate about this. Here's my talent. Here's what I've been doing to help my community, to support X, Y, and Z charity. And you're really doing good for the world. And, you're also utilizing your talent and finding a passion or cultivating a passion that you have to either help a group or an organization, but also doing something that you just really want to put out into the world without having to start a business.
Or spend time at the library and research on your passion more until you can feel comfortable, right? Yes. And all these any other avenues, anything that you do in terms of volunteering is going to help them in the future, like you said, even with their college and whatnot. So enhancing their breadth, why is it important even at a young age? What role does it play in their future?
So I think that allowing your teenagers to try different things and experience different things on their own and either succeed or pivot, right? Change, it builds their confidence greatly, right? Because it reminds them that, I can trust myself. I can trust my instincts. I can trust my talent, trust my abilities, because I didn't know that I could do this, but I tried it and I did it and it worked really, really well, or it didn't turn out exactly like I wanted, but it made me think of this other thing and I pivoted and tried this other thing and it led me here, right? So building that confidence is huge.
Do you think colleges and future employment, how do you think they view every stage of an individual? Do you think what they do at this stage matters a lot, or it matters some, or it may not matter at all? What is your take on that?
I'm going to say I think it depends. I personally think it matters a lot, but it matters in the sense of it depends on what it is you want to do in your future or you do in your future, and how much of what you did as a teenager you share and you talk about, right? So if you are doing something as a teenager that you think might benefit you as an adult because you want to be a graphic designer or you want to be a filmmaker or you want to manufacture a product and you start now, that can influence and help your future self so greatly because you're starting and learning now and you're figuring out who you are in this space, right? I think we all take from our experiences from our entire lives, and it builds and it makes us who we become, right? And it makes us who we are as adults. So I think that anything that your teenagers and kids are doing now, it's going to build them into who they become. It may not be it's definitely not going to be the only factor, but it will be an important factor in who they become.
Okay. Obviously, we are not trying to advocate a jack of all trades scenario here. But still, like we are only talking from the standpoint of parents encouraging whatever their teens bring to their fold and, in terms of the ideas and whatever they want to do. But somewhere along the lines, are we trying to immerse ourselves all in an achievement culture?
This is where I think that why I say it depends on future state, right? If what you do now is going to impact your future. Like I look at my son as an entrepreneur. And so my son who wants to be a filmmaker, he has been hit hard with that achievement culture in high school because of, he goes to Cambridge High School, which is an amazing high school. I love them, but AP classes, straight A student, he has had all that pressure of you need to do all these things to get into the college that you want to, in the university that you want to go to. And for 4 years, he's worked his butt off to.
Mom, I need to remind you, he has graduated from Cambridge High School.
Oh, you're right.
You're still in that mode where Kellie Taylor still thinks Alex Taylor is going to Cambridge.
You're right. He graduated from Cambridge. Oh, it's still so fresh and new. I can't handle this.
No, I was just trying to obviously, bring reality to light, but at the same time have some, lighter vein here. Bring some lighter vein to the conversation.
That's totally fine.
Just go on with your thought.
Okay, so he has graduated from Cambridge, and so he full on was immersed in that achievement culture, and he felt it. When he was applying to schools, and then he did not get accepted to his top 2 picks out in California, it was devastating. It was heartbreaking because he had done everything and more to check those boxes and to, ensure that he could get in. Right. And, and it was just a crapshoot. It didn't, I don't want to say it didn't matter, but he didn't get into his top schools. So we sat down and I told him, I said, look, honey, for what you want to do, you want to be a filmmaker and you want to direct films and you have already done that. And that world. I was like, you don't need this, and so many people are going to just probably stroke out when they hear me say this, but for him in particular, I was like, you don't have to have a college degree to go do what you want to do. Steven Spielberg, I think, dropped out of college very early on to go make his movies, right? Like that's just one of many, many examples. I said, I was like, I want you to have the college experience because I think you will love it and you'll get so much out of it. And it'll be such a big part of your young adult life that I really want you to have it. I said, but, and I know you've worked so hard for 4 years to achieve going to college and getting into college and doing that whole thing. I was like, but you also want to be a filmmaker, and the things that you've done entrepreneurial, I was like, you very much could move out to LA, not until August because I'm not ready until August. But I was like, you could move out to LA and start working, get a job on a set, and like really just start your life out there. You particularly, Alex Taylor, does not have to go to college, which was a big deal for his dad and I to say that, because we always thought our kids would go to college, and we are sucked into that achievement culture and all that. So he has chosen to go to school, and he wants to go to college, and he's not ready to just start his life. But as entrepreneurs and people who, just like people who are creatives or are passionate and big into sports and maybe super talented in sports and may get signed on from high school to pro. I'm not a sports person, so I don't even know if that actually is how that works, but I'm guessing maybe some people go.
I guess, the route is high school to collegiate, whatever sport they play, like the NCAA divisions. And, there's 1, 2, 3 in several sports.
Right.
So they take that route. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that, again, kids who follow their passions, and if it's in the entrepreneurial world, you don't necessarily have to go to college or go get your master's or go to medical school or law school. So wrapped up in this achievement culture, like you talked about, you don't have to do that because you're following it. I'll call it a non-traditional route, possibly. So as parents, that can be scary, right? Because like if your kid is, Alex he and his friends had a podcast, and they interviewed this kid that graduated from high school, started a business. I think he might have gone to college, but I think he dropped out because his business took off and he made, a ton of money, and his business became huge, and he didn't need his college degree, and he wanted to focus on his business. And that was a pivot he was wanting to make and willing to make, and he did, and it worked for him. So I think in this achievement culture, we look at it as like a failure if our kids don't graduate with honors from high school and then go to a college and then, go on to do all these things. But with, all I know is that with my son, I was like, I would not have looked at it as a failure if he had decided to move out to LA in August, maybe September, and start his life and start his career.
But I guess it's worth pointing out that you are so sure of what he's doing. And so it's important to have a concrete plan and be solid about what you're doing. And then, you can just take, or you are able to, make your decisions that still remain fruitful and productive, right? And I guess the other question would be, how do you handle the peer pressure, ego, and whatnot, and then still make it a productive and collaborative effort if they choose to, just have common ideas, or one can help the other, in terms of making, say, a certain idea better.
Right. Yeah. I think it's, whether it's in an entrepreneurial space or just a life space or friend zone, or, even in sports, right? Like my daughter plays lacrosse. So, she's on the Cambridge varsity lacrosse team, and I look at that team, and there's all kinds of drama, but then there's all kinds of amazing stuff and support and, just that team factor, right? So I do love the aspect of, from an entrepreneurial perspective, of collaboration and working with your friends or your peers or people who you really respect and who have talents that are different but complement your own. Because I think being an entrepreneur and a solo entrepreneur can be is super hard, but can be lonely too, because you're doing so much yourself, and that can be hard on teenagers. So if you can find ways to bring in peers and friends or other people, that you really like and admire and respect to help with your business, that can be really huge. And like Alex, for his 2 films that he produced, cast, crew, everyone involved in the production, they were all teenagers. His dad and I were the only really 2 adults that we'd be on set late at night because there needed to be an adult somewhere on set because we were out and about in the world and there needed to be an adult there. But they did everything, and he loved doing that. And his friends loved being part of that whole thing. Be very diligent about only bringing in people that you really trust, and not trust just because of their actions, but that you are compatible with, that you can collaborate with, and that you respect and trust. And that really does help build your communication style, build your leadership style, which I also think is very valuable to have as a teenager, and an entrepreneurial teenager.
Okay. And as closing thoughts for parents and every listener here, Kellie, be it a student, be it adult, trying to help improve the quality of life of a tween or teen, what can we highlight here? And as far as mentoring and resources for people that, like we discussed earlier, they have an idea but don't know how to go after it. Mm-hmm. So if we can just, cover all these aspects, and that way, I think people definitely would find that information very, very handy.
Yeah. So I think that as a parent of a teenager who wants to put something out into the world or become an entrepreneur, the biggest things to remember are ask questions, don't give advice unless warranted or asked for.
I can't emphasize that more.
Not emphasize that enough. Offer support, which is emotional, which is knowledge, which is financial, however you can offer your support. Encourage and praise what they're doing. So, let them know that you absolutely love all the things that they're doing, buy their product, check out all the things they're doing, follow them on social media, on their business social media accounts, so you can like and post and, do all those things. Make sure they're okay with you doing that, because sometimes the mom factor is a little weird and they may not like that. But if they're okay with it, then share. And us moms, we're all over Facebook, right? So share their business, and that's how you can support as well. So that's, I think, the most important thing for parents of entrepreneurs, right? As a teenager, if you think you might be an entrepreneur and you want to get started, then first and foremost, go to Google and Google wherever you are in your journey. So if you have an idea and that's where you're starting and you know nothing else, then Google that idea and see if it's already out there. And if it is, don't give up and just find a way to put your personal unique spin on that idea. And then keep going, right? If you already have your idea and you know what you want to do and you have your business name and you have your website, but now you don't know what to do, then Google, how do I grow my business, right? Where do I go next? And just follow that path and read as much as you can, whether it's articles from, just from online, whether it's books, whether it's blogs from other people who are doing what you're doing that you really value. I follow so many web designers, female web designers, that I just love their designs. I love their business. I love everything about them. I follow them. I read all of their blogs. I learn so much about them. I'm kind of obsessed with their businesses because I love that. And that's how even now I still do that. Join free webinars and free courses online. There's so many out there. So just all of that is free. And you can do all of that during the summer. It's a great time to do it when you don't have schoolwork and you don't, you can do it in between. If you have a summer job, you can do it in between your job. But it is a great way to really get things going and get started. And as you said, start journaling, write everything down. come up with a plan, map things out. You may not even know how to map it out yet, but just write it down. And then you're going to slowly get organized and figure that out. And then you can start a business plan and then go from there. And because there's so many elements of a business and there's a little bit of, you need to do this first and the second, but not really. So it's just really where you are in your idea is where you need to start.
Yeah, and then that helps put a structure in, and that way, when school starts, they are also able to balance both, and you're able to segment and plan your time on what, when you would do school, when you would do your sport, when you would do your business.
Yes, that's huge. And I know we didn't talk about that, and I know we're wrapping up, but that is actually super important, that it is hard to balance that and school. And with parents, that is one place that I actually do recommend you sort of stay on top of, because if they're in high school and your kids' grades seem to start to fall, if they aren't being social, if they're not doing the things that they used to do in a large scale because of the business, then you do need to jump in and sit down with them and say, hey, unfortunately, high school is your number one job right now, and you really need to get through it. And we need to figure out a plan to allow you to get through high school, but also do your business, because it can take over, especially if they are as passionate about it as some kids are. That's all they want to do. So that is a very important conversation to have with your teenager before school starts, is, okay, where are you in your business? How do you plan to manage school and business and sports and after school job and whatever else you have going on? I need to know, as your parent, what your plan is for that and how you're going to manage it, because that's what I'm going to be monitoring, because I'm still your parent. I'm not going to monitor your business. That's all you, but I need to monitor where you're spending your time and how you're spending your time, and making sure that school is still a priority.
Oh, yeah. I mean, staying hands off where we need to be, but then still keeping that structure intact.
Yes.
And just being involved 100% where we need to be and exercise our parental role, I think is highly significant. And you really, brought that out very, very nicely there. And as far as resources and mentoring, I think, we talked about the webinars, the courses, and such other, all the wonderful information and resources that one can find via Google. And it may also be worth pointing out that LinkedIn is a great resource for these entrepreneurs. And that way you get to build your network, and then you can find great mentors. You can learn from people. And I totally agree. All the blog posts and whatever, any post, anything that other people do that are well established in their line of business, and which may be pointers and which may help us, anyone, right?
Yes.
Learn from it. I think it's definitely worth a shot, worth going after. And that way you get to build your network, because networking is the key. It's crucial, and it's necessary for one to grow and coexist and support one another. Hey, it takes a village, right?
It takes a village.
So right there, I think with those thoughts, thank you so much, Kellie. That was a wonderful conversation. We'll definitely check back with you again in the future, but I'm sure so many teens, so many tweens, so many parents would find this very, very interesting and make the most of their summer. So enjoy yourself and get the most of your high school grad before he runs off to college.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I loved talking about this topic, and I loved being on your show. And yes, I will be hugging on my high school grad for the next couple months.
All right. Thank you so much for being here. To listeners, thanks so much for tuning in week after week. Follow me on Instagram at YP and for the podcast at Freshly Forever for constant updates. I will see you back again next week with yet another guest and yet another interesting topic. Until then, it's Vi saying so long.